Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Before we jump into this episode, and because the episode is not that long, I wanted to take a minute to talk about my counter sheet that I maintain and update every single Grand Arena Championships. I think that it's a resource that a lot of people kind of ignore or are at least missing out on, so I wanted to spread awareness. What you're looking at is a screenshot from my counter sheet, and I'll be the first to admit it's not super flashy. I know that there are a lot of really great infograms out there, or at least they're great visually because they do absolutely look good. They just use visual representations of different things, and they don't really have much substance. Just because I know that Jedi Knight Revan can beat other Jedi Knight Revans in the mirror match, I don't necessarily know who the best 5th Jedi is, for instance, to be able to do that. What my counter sheet does is lists the full team in alphabetical order, every single match that I have and every single match that I use to counter them is listed as well by leader. And so you can kind of just get a snapshot of the teams that I used and the teams that I faced. And if you want a more in-depth look at it, there's a hyperlink to the video in question where you can from there click on the video description and you can timestamp jump all the way to whatever video you want to look at. So it's a pretty convenient way to be able to watch a squad in action if you're not sure, and if you don't know what squad can be countered, you can see. I also have a co-conspirator who's also puts some of his videos out. He doesn't put as many out as I do, but that's okay because my videos are better anyway. You can find a link to my counter sheet in the video description for this particular video. Now this match is the first one in the second round of Grand Arena, so it ends up being the 4th match, but this is probably the best chance that I'm going to get someone easy to face, and looking at my opponent's roster, it was probably not going to be the case. They had a ton of gear 13 everywhere, and that's always intimidating.
Are you ready for a war?
Moving into this match, I was instantly aware of the fact that my opponent was a free thinker because they had B2 on defense as the lead, and jumping into the zones, I saw that there was absolutely no synergy, and they had apparently just completely forgotten or disdained setting defenses. So we get to work with that today, which is great because I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of views on this. Now, I haven't really had this happen to me for a really long time. Then the fact that my opponent had already made Bronzium League implies that they had been active with Grand Arena Championships, this current one, and so I really didn't know. But I mean, it's a free win, and in the quest for Kyber, I guess it's nice to have at least one freebie. So the first match was with all of their heaviest hitters that had Grievous and Revan, and also Revan and Brood Alpha, and it's actually like kind of close to a meta team. It's not, but I decided to take a full team here just because I didn't want anything to go crazy, because if I failed this attack somehow, I wouldn't really have a counter for it later. So one thing I will point out in this video is that I've actually speeded all of my content here up to 150% speed, just so that we can move through and be able to have a shorter video. These fights are mostly boring to me because I know there's no stakes at hand. Like, the fact that I beat one of my opponent's teams means that I probably just win regardless if I just like walk away or not. So we're trying to get banners, but there's no real like need for perfection here, and so I'm just going for undersized wins as much as I can because I want to be able to get that feat. That's a pretty huge part of being able to make Kyber, is being able to have that undersized feat, and so that's what I chose to do here. Almost all of my attacks are going to be undersized. I think I think there's 2 or 3 that aren't, but in the long term, like, I really wasn't threatened by many of these teams, though there was one time that I underestimated my opponent, so you have that to look forward to, absolutely. And one thing I was impressed by this fight, probably the only part that I was impressed by this fight, was that Newt had a lot of hit points. Like, he was non-trivially removed, so something to keep in mind. I mean, he had a couple relic levels on him, so that's not too surprising because relics give a ton of health. But on the other hand, it's something to be thinking about. Like, he can actually fit into a lot of squads and actually be a little less frail. Well, at least he'll be less frail until everyone else catches up on relic levels, and then he'll probably just get punched again pretty quick. And I think this is actually going to be my mistake here. I really wanted to be able to get undersized wins, but unfortunately, it's just not really that great of a matchup here. Jedi Training Ray can absolutely win this if I have 5 members, and I do absolutely do a lot of good damage here, and maybe I'm even remembering it wrong, but as it stands, like, I'm clearly struggling a little bit against this team, and that's just because of the fact that I only took 4 characters rather, and the fight kind of drags on after a while. Like, I took out Emperor Palpatine, so I ensured that no matter what in the next match, like, I'd be able to at least win the next one. Like, there's not going to be a leadership. Darth Vader doesn't just become their leader, even though he's second in the line. And I don't even know if he's in second in the line. Oh, so he is. So I decided to continue with my theme of undersizing squads and potentially underestimating them. So Ewoks were the next men or fur creatures up. And I actually had thought that I'd taken out Han as well before I died my inglorious death. But it kind of got off to a rough start. Ewoks don't have a huge amount of hit points, and this was a relic Han, and these other characters are all pretty decent as well. And BB-8 with T3 actually has some pretty interesting interactions, and so this isn't like a trivial squad. Like, it is in a lot of ways, but the fact that I'm trying to counter them with an undermanned Ewok squad is means it is potentially going to be problematic. And so we're just watching the Ewoks just try to take turn after turn, and that's for the most part what they're doing. And now the next obvious attack is going to be on BB-8, because he's the one who's doing all the damage. He's distributing all the buffs. He's doing all the things now. He also has Taunt up because he has that Omega, and that's like one Omega that I've never applied actually. But it's fairly obnoxious when it's just BB-8 and one other droid, which does not happen with much regularity, other than if you're running him on a General Grievous nuke team or whatever. And I quickly realized that the fact that BB-8 had Foresight up so often, he was just going to regenerate his health and protection really fast, and so I decided to just focus on T3. And if I needed to, I would just send in another squad, like send in Phoenix and undersize BB-8 on his own, just in case the Ewoks did like timeout or something. But as it stood, once T3 was gone, T3 was also guilty of healing BB-8 as well. And once we were able to take out T3, I say we as like me and the Ewoks, because we're friends apparently, we took out T3, and it's not necessarily easy for a bunch of Ewoks to kill BB-8 because they don't do much damage, and BB-8 has the I believe that it's a Zeta, I can't remember now, which lets you regenerate 8% health and protection every time you evade an attack. And so if the Ewoks are missing half their shots and they're not hitting very hard in the first place, it's just really hard to do damage, especially when you have a character like T3 who can actually heal other droids pretty. Alright, so this match is another one that's just completely nonsensical. It's just got all the different characters that might be good on their own squads, just kind of smashed together. But again, this is kind of a tricky one because we have Treya, who does great debuffs, Luke, who is just strong on his own, Rey, who is strong on her own and gives a lot of really potent debuffs as well, and then Bosk can taunt on any team, and B2 can also do his thing, like gain all the turn meter and stuff from me hitting his allies. They don't necessarily have to be his fellow separatists, and so we're just trying to take them out one at a time. I decided that this was probably the best use for the Treya team because Treya was going to be able to isolate B2, and then I could focus on other characters. Like if you have to kill B2 before you take out Jedi Training Rey or Treya or whoever, like that's a potential issue. Like I didn't really feel that strong against this team. With other teams that weren't, like I could use Jedi Knight Revan. He's already a Jedi. Sorry, Rey. And really, if you ever get the opportunity to isolate B2, it is such a satisfying experience just because he's so obnoxious, because you have to take him out before you take anyone else out on a team. And if they have taunters and if they have the right ways to kind of distract you from that, it can really be aggravating, especially when he's a really high gear level as well. So you can see here I've gone back to the feats page, and that's just to be able to clear out the feats that I had already earned, and specifically I wanted to clear out the set feat for undersized squads, because if you accomplish that feat, it's great, it's wonderful, good job, but you need to claim it before you start working on the next version of it. Like you have these three permanent feats, all wrapped into one, and they're all designed to allow you to work at your own pace on trying to get undersized squads, and that's great. I actually really like that feature, but on the other hand, it's imperfect because once you do claim that particular feat, or once you earn it, you can't start working on the next iteration until you claim it. So in this case, like if I had gone undersized on this battle and I hadn't claimed the feat, I would not get any credit for it. I'd need to go claim that feat, and then I would, from that point, start over. So just a word to the wise here, when you guys are working on that feat, undersized squads are such an annoying thing that you want to be really cognizant of that particular aspect. So another nonsensical squad, and after I had taken kind of my inventory of other squads that I had, I realized that I would need to use first order against something. And I'm not really like complaining or saying that this is the most difficult thing I've ever done in Grand Arena. It isn't. The thing that's tough about it is trying to maximize as best you can and make these decisions. Like, the fact is, a lot of times your opponent is only going to put their top, 20 characters on defense, and then they'll keep their other top 20 for offense. And in this case, we're taking the full 40 all smashed together on defense. And so it's, like I say, it's not the most difficult. The AI doesn't look at efficiency by any stretch. They don't care, but at the same time, I'm most likely having to face my opponent's crazy roster with all kinds of, they have all their Zetas and all their Gear 13 and, some Gear 12, but it's 40 characters that are all the 40 best that my opponent has, with a few exceptions perhaps, just because GP is weird and the developers haven't fully balanced it, which who cares really. But in the long run, like this kind of battle can be pretty mentally taxing, because first order usually isn't going to be able to counter a lot of these top 40 characters. They're kind of operating on the fringes, and the ones that they do counter, you have to be pretty specific about it and intentional about what squads you're going to be targeting with them. And you can see here, I threw him against Droidica, and that's a match that you never see. like First Order never attacks General Grievous squads, at least yet. You know, they'll get a rework eventually, I'm sure, but right now they don't attack General Grievous squads, and so you never realize how ridiculously hard the Droideka can hit, and he just completely destroyed Kylo Ren, who had a bunch of protection mods, and you know, is relatively well modded, well geared, and the Droideka just took him out. And that's not necessarily a problem that I would face if my opponent had actually set their defense. So here's another opportunity to get an undersized win. My Padme squad is, it's strong because it has Jedi Knight Anakin, basically. Like, he can just kind of one-shot all the things. And I say that, and then he just doesn't one-shot a single thing. But the fact remains that he does hit really hard, and he's kind of a carry for this. He's going to absolutely destroy whoever he messes with, and so, you know, we're just kind of operating off of that right now. Eventually other characters are going to be adding relic levels, and he's not going to be nearly as overpowered. Like, you could see that my opponent, oh good, chromium, that's just what I care about. Alright, so I think this is the final match, and we're just going to take Jedi Revan in and completely destroy them, hopefully. This squad, out of all of them, probably makes the least sense, even though there are still some hidden synergies. Like, we still have the Jango with B1 problem, and, you know, they're both separatists. Like, they have some synergy together. They're also really, really well geared, and they can do a ton of damage. So just trying to pick off one character at a time, and really at this point, like, there's just no way, other than me crashing or something, I could lose this one. I mean, all of these were fairly easy. The fact that I failed with Jedi Training Rey is something that's somewhat of an embarrassment for me, but otherwise, I mean, this isn't really a Grand Arena. Like, it's not interesting. It's frustrating that my opponent just didn't place their defenses, and I don't know why. I checked their profile on Star Wars SWGOH.gg, and they just haven't hit in Arena for a while either. So I don't know what's happening. Maybe they were a cheater. And with that, the entire board was cleared. So not super heroic, and I probably won't be showing a ton of these videos, honestly. Oh, here's the loot for Carbonite, or whatever league I'm in, Chromium now. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's support. It's been a trip making all this content and everything. And just as a reward for making it to the very end of the video, I wanted to show you something that my sister and I created when we were on vacation. It was just kind of randomly generated, but it was kind of fun. So enjoy, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.
What kind of animal is this? I wish I could see. I want to size up.
Did it work?
Nope.
Hold on.
There you go.